Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Hal Bradley. I would like to ask us, each and every one of you, that if you enjoyed these shows, please hit like, share, and subscribe after you view the show. Thank you very much.
Hello, world. Welcome to another episode of the Crisis Victory Show. I'm Dr. Hal Bradley, your host. My co-host, Pete Turner, he's floating in the background there somewhere. Pete, pop in, say hi. There
Hi,
he
everybody.
is. Morning, brother. And today, Bill Conroy has decided to come on the show and have a very interesting conversation with me. Bill, primarily, you were a journalist during some of the era in time that I was still operating with the Sinaloa drug cartel, correct?
Yeah. I mean, you got a pretty long history. It goes back to the 70s, but probably that era from post 9/11 through 2018, 19.
Yeah,
That's when I was covering the drug war on the border. I lived in San Antonio and hooked up with a online nonprofit publication that did a lot of work around Latin America, but particularly the drug war. And my beat was essentially the border, but it ended. You can't, once you cross the border, the whole country opens up, right? I mean,
absolutely. Yeah. And another thing that fascinated me was that you had done your groundwork about me, about my story, about people affiliated with me. That is the first in over 80 episodes I've done on the show where somebody dug in deep like that. I want to thank you for that. I think it's important in our conversation that some of this story, if you will, is validated. And of course, some of it is, but there's so much of my life that is still high security. It's classified, it's sealed. As you're aware in your investigation and research, I had walked in 1993 of my own free will, just after coming out of Sinaloa, from Culiacán, Sinaloa specifically. Came home to a van packed full of kilos of cocaine. Following day, I turned the van around, walked into the U.S. Attorney's office, said, "I'm Hal Bradley." And they said, "Oh, my God, the primary target of Operation Northern Exposure just walked in the door." And my purpose, Bill, was when I went to Culiacán, was to forever terminate my work after 15 years of being associated with the Sinaloa Cartel, all the way back before it was even the Sinaloa Cartel. And yeah, we were talking about Guadalajara, the Jalisco, the foundation of the Jalisco Cartel, which is Angel Felix Gallardo, who is the creator of that, and I'm sure you know that. That's also where I met a guy named Rafael Caro Quintero. I smuggled marijuana, purchased marijuana, and smuggled it out of there for a while. But ultimately, after the captivity of Kiki Camarena and ultimately leading to his execution, and may his family rest in peace with that. It's so horrifying. I was actually in country at the time of his being grabbed, picking up a load, got it out of there, and told them, I said, "Man, you guys really, really messed up. You just kidnapped a DEA agent." And I said, "You have no idea what you've done." And I stayed out of Mexico for 8 months. I just stopped everything because I knew that was going to explode. And sure enough, we've all seen it.
It's still ongoing.
Definitely.
Especially for DEA, it's still in the background. Yeah, and what was interesting? Yeah, he was kind of Caro Quintero was kind of going nuts. Do they just
Rafa?
Whacked the
Rafa was nuts.
Student. Yeah, well, that's I was curious because that's the image he has.
Talked to him several times. I knew him personally. He was absolutely incredible. He was a genius in the creation of Sensimilla. He is the godfather of the creation of Sensimilla, I'd like to say, by the way. He got rid of the seeds that we were having so much trouble with that weed up here in the States.
Yeah. I grew up in the day,
of course. Yeah. So we all know about those stems and seeds.
Yeah, in the paraquat fears, right?
Yeah, and the paraquat weed. Yep, all them little white spots on those buds or those leaves did not look good. But getting back to Rafael, Rafa was jealous about the introduction of cocaine coming into the industry. His love was marijuana. That was his whole thing. And when the cocaine became introduced, and I believe that was probably 79 or 80.
Yeah, when they worked out with the Colombians to figure out. That's when Mexico just became the major cartel land, if you will, because they cornered the market on distribution, basically.
Well, there's a lot of history that people still don't know with regard to the transitioning of that I mean, like when Chapo went down to Medellin, Colombia, and actually had a sit down with him and gave him a guarantee that he could move so much weight within 2 days, and actually pulled it off with Amayo up there in El Paso Juarez area. He was the head of the Juarez cartel, and they did it, and that was what really blew everything wide open. And the marijuana thing fell by the wayside. It became more kept alive, if you will, by smaller farmers that were moving it through independent operators stateside. The cartels were shifting so much into cocaine at that time. It had a major impact on the marijuana industry. That and Northern California. We're talking late 70s.
Humboldt and all that. But the interesting thing about it's just an economic decision.
Exactly.
The value per ounce of cocaine versus marijuana is, and it's you can ship so much more of it. I mean, that's it. And plus, it still is an insatiable demand in the States and in Europe for cocaine.
Well, absolutely. And you have to remember too, Bill, at the time that we got introduced to the cocaine market on the West Coast, I mean, Griselda controlled all of it there through Miami and did all of that with the Medellin and later the Cali cartel. But getting back to this, in the 70s, I lived in Ukiah, California for 4 years. I was in Mendocino, Humboldt County. So I was right there during the time of all of that really developing. And with marijuana, by 79, marijuana from Mexico, although it was pretty decent quality, pretty good quality, it didn't have the lure and the appeal and the economic structure that they had created in Humboldt County, California. And, the Emerald Triangle. It was just an amazing time to live up there. And, but unfortunately, the people I was involved with in Mexico took me from smuggling marijuana out of their country in 79 to my first load of cocaine. I did my first one with a vehicle, a car. And after that, I picked up a 172 Skyhawk, graduated to a 185 Skyhawk, and I started flying through the
You taught yourself to fly? I mean,
I flew myself. But I was going through that at Yaqui Reservation that was half in the United States and half in Mexico. And we had a deal through the cartels where they arranged for us to be able to do our canyon hops through that area. And then in the state of Sonora, about 200 clicks north of Hermosillo, we had a rancher up there that bladed out an airstrip for us. And so that's where we were doing our pickups and flying cash back down, bricks of it. It was just
the old saying, guns and cash go south and drugs go north. Right?
Exactly right, brother. And another thing was the transformation of once cocaine was introduced into our world. By then, I'd already been moving marijuana up here in Washington State. I had moved to Sacramento after Humboldt County, or Mendocino County, excuse me, got married and was living there in Sacramento. One of my associates, and you said his name, and I don't want to say his name on the news, out of respect. He ended up in Los Angeles, but still was totally tied to just outside of Culiacán, where his little village was at. And we became as close as brothers. And I ended up having to betray him, which has devastated my heart all of these years. It wasn't an easy choice, but it was a life and death choice. When you take
that's what happens in that world. I mean, usually the only way you get out of it is prison or dead.
I've been to prison twice, kept my mouth shut, did my time. That wasn't the issue. The issue was taking a peasant from a small village who turned into a multimillionaire literally within a year's time, and just didn't know how to cut it loose. And when I went to Culiacán and met up with my brother down there, I told him, look, man, we got federal heat all up our ass up there in Washington. I had an officer on the narcotics division, Seattle Police Department, on my payroll, so I had access to information.
See, that's interesting you say that, because we'll go back to it maybe, but what I saw and how drugs get into the country, it had on the border anyway. Yeah. It was about buying people off, and that was the easiest way.
They had
the inspectors. They knew, when they were on the bridge, and they coordinated loads with inspectors they had bought off.
Well, Highway 15 to Highway 2, you have all the border town, Calexico, Mexicali, and then over in Nogales and all this. And we had lanes that we would literally be told to go through at specific times. So, it was all definitely paid off back in the day. But I quit smuggling in 1981. By the time the cocaine was flourishing up here on the West Coast, they didn't want me to be at risk on the border at all. So It said, aquí en su corazón vive la sangre de la ciudad. In my heart pumped the blood of the village. As a child living in a mining camp down there in the 1960s, I became family. But I'm blonde hair, blue eyed. I spoke Spanish. I could travel anywhere in America without drawing heat or nothing. So they used me for the next 6 years, seven years, to build a foundation that stemmed cocaine transport all the way through Canada, all the way to Alaska. I mean, and the amount of kilos we were doing were in the hundreds of kilos. And that person's name that you and I were talking about before the show, I got connected with somebody else that had Colombian ties and was moving actually more weight for them than I was for him. But fortunately, I was able to put all the radar under one organization and not get myself killed off too quickly. I don't know if when you investigated me to some extent, I don't know. I got hit up here June 6th, June 7th of 2020. I was found.
I heard you talking about that. Yeah, I didn't get the complete context, so I just know that you were in pretty close to checking out.
Yeah, I was. As a matter of fact, when I was losing consciousness, the last knife strike in my head, I knew I was dead. I knew, and it was really cool because I got to tell you, the peace of letting all of this world go, it really does exist. And as you know, I'm a trained hospice counselor. Mm-hmm. I've got 28 years in hospice care. I got my chaplaincy certification in 2018 and was just visiting patients at Providence Hospital the day before yesterday. So I'm very active in that. I've watched many people pass over to the other side, but now I understand what they felt in that moment, looking up at me just a moment or two before they pass. And they would say, like, I love you, or God bless you, or thank you. They have such a calmness. And when I was laying out in the alley behind my house here, that last knife strike, the guy released me because he knew that he had killed me at that point. Right. I believed it too. And I remember just before I blacked out, just being so grateful for the life I've had and thankful for all of it. And those feelings truly, as I was separating from this world and getting ready to go to the other, I felt a love wrap around me that I had never felt before. But now, that's been 5-6 years now, and I work still in hospice. And when I see that look on people's faces as they know they're getting ready to depart, I can relate. I understand it. It's a beautiful thing.
Well, in your case, though, more than most normal folks, you got to live with the specter of that over your shoulder now for the rest
of my life. I do.
And coming to grips with that, like you would, most people I think would go insane or paranoid or bug out, but you got to have some kind of perspective on it, like acceptance of it, I guess.
Also the decency. When I was a child, I was a Cub Scout. I was a Boy Scout. My mother was a den mother. My father was assistant scoutmaster. I grew up with morals and ethics in a very decent family. My siblings are all successful in life, all been married for decades, all have just live really, really good, healthy lives. And because of my journey to Mexico at the age of 15 in 1969 and being told to come back to a village that showed me more love than anywhere I'd ever felt it in my life, I went back down to say hi to the village. And that's when I got recruited and ended up in a criminal enterprise. But always in my soul, brother, I knew that I was doing wrong. And that's why I flew to Culiacán and talked to him that night and said, look, I'm just not going to do this no more. And instead, their signature was coming home and finding a load of a third of a ton.
You don't get out. They're not going to let you out.
You don't. But I thought I could because I was a child from the village.
I get it completely.
Yeah, but no, you're
recruited that young.
Yeah.
That's
what was really interesting because I got pulled out of Leavenworth. I ended up in Leavenworth Federal Prison towards the end of my time, and I got pulled out of Leavenworth, brought back before a judge, and got released and became a contractor for the Department of Justice. And I spent a total of 17 years undercover. And I was operating in multiple foreign countries. I had their trust. I had their respect as they had mine. And when an agent puts his life in your hands as somebody that had been in the criminal world like I was for 15 years, there's no description to what you feel about one another because everything is life and death. And my purpose was to be used to insert me into an organized criminal organization of whatever country I was in at that time. And my background could be verified that I was, all of these things. We made sure, if you notice, Operation Northern Exposure never even made it into the news. ever.
Yeah, you're right. There wasn't.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing how they did that? And it's because they knew what they had in a man like me of my caliber and the amount of weight that I was moving. Growing up in that environment, it made me the perfect person to be able to infiltrate organizations and insert agents of various organizations. And that's what I did for all of those years. And like you were talking about earlier before the show with the CIA, how they were primarily an intelligence gathering or agency. They weren't down, well, there's things that I've seen them do that I'm not going to talk about, but
yeah,
the primary purpose of the Central Intelligence Agency and DEA, even down in those countries, would be intelligence gathering that could become effective in cases up here in the United States, where they would ultimately prosecute and convict. But let me tell you, you're right. You don't walk away from that world. You never do. I'm in my 70s now. I started in that world at the age of 15. It's been my entire life. I've written 11 books on that subject, 12th counting my autobiography. Man, brother, it's just...
Well, you know, the weird thing too, though, other informants that I've talked to that kind of ended up similar situation, or they were working for the government, and of course they would fight deportation. These were Mexican citizens because they figured they would get whacked by the cartel that they portrayed.
Absolutely. And their families.
But what's happened in Mexico over the last like 10 or 15 years, at least one guy I know went in when the U.S Cartel was a thing. And then now the Sinaloa Cartel, I don't actually even know what the turf wars are in the Juarez area, because I haven't last year haven't kept up with it for sure. But I know it's heated up. The point being, the cartels change. So you might come out and be valuable to them again,
Well, you know what?
If you're connected, if you're already made somewhere, So it's
evolutionary, brother. It's an evolution, and they have to evolve. And they were even evolving in the times that we went from marijuana to cocaine. I mean, you evolve, and the environment involves the violence now
it's off the charts. Yeah,
it's off the charts.
Well, a lot of these guys too, they got military training. Cartels brought in.
Oh, absolutely.
Were either trained by Mexican special forces, or in some cases not as many, but it happened by us when we were doing training down there. And all the guns come from us. I mean, there's a story in the New York Times yesterday or today actually, talking about how many seizures at the border for like 4,300 guns. That's only a fraction of what gets through going.
Oh yeah.
You make. Okay, told me you buy a handgun up here and sell it for 5 times that down in Mexico.
Oh, absolutely.
Have this. Yeah, that tells you.
They had a saying about how they counted money down there that I'll never forget, and that's that they'd weigh a semi truck. Go fill that son of a gun full of bales of money and reweigh that truck. And that's how they would guesstimate how much money they had. And that's kind of money, the amount of money. I've been in houses down there where it was literally stacked to the ceiling in multiple rooms.
And none of that. Think about that. This is, and I know this is true because I was a business reporter too, but all the bank that gets laundered, there's no way all that they got to launder it, and it's getting laundered through eventually it's our financial system in 100 different ways. But when the banks get caught because they don't enforce money laundering statutes, especially U.S. affiliates of banks in the States, they get a slap on the wrist. No one goes to jail, and then
it's worth the loss.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And then DOJ will monitor them for 2 or 3 years. And usually they appoint like former prosecutors to be on the monitoring team. So it's almost like a revolving door, like a racket. It's like,
well, it is.
They don't go after the money, they don't. And that there's a lot of, you probably could talk to that a little bit, because I think that would be far more effective than drugs are a renewable resource.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing now the biggest thing they're marketing now is human trafficking.
Yeah,
that's a product you can use over and over and over and over again.
Yeah, and it's the sad. I wonder what your thoughts are on this, because I remember having a conversation years ago when the big cannabis legalization was just taking hold of. Now half the states have some form of recreational or medical marijuana, and that didn't completely wipe out the cartel marijuana trade, but it did put a huge dent in it. And this guy told me back then. He says, what's going to happen, because he was talking about the African diamond trade when they outlawed blood diamonds. He says, the criminal groups just moved to a different racket.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, that's some of what I think we saw happen. Is they got into these human trafficking. Yeah, it was definitely one of them.
Yeah, I can remember I was in Sinaloa years ago picking up marijuana just outside of La Tuna. That's, by the way, where Chapo was born. But there's a ranch that we would meet out that, and they would take my car in the building and they'd put it in the compartments and get it ready to go. I had 3 cars running at that time. But my point is this: when I hit the ranch, I can remember going up to talk to the Hefe at the house, and I heard noises in the house and looking down the hallway. I was looking for a place to go to the bathroom. And here were these little children's heads sticking out the door, and you could hear them crying. You could hear them wailing. You could see the fear in their faces. And I can never, ever, ever shake that. And in my Facebook account in the last year, I have focused so much on the Epstein files, organizations that deal in all of this. And it amazes me how many people defend that. They're all saying it's AI or it's Biden and the Democrats, or it's, it's all this fake news stuff. It's not. It's not fake news, and
it's historical. I mean, all the
it is historical.
Roman Empire had it's been with, and it's often idle people with they kind of lose touch with. There's no consequence to things. Then they go down these paths that are pretty horrifying.
Beyond that. Beyond that,
But no, the Epstein stuff's very real and it's very believable. Let me ask you this, and I hate to put it this way, but this is just being honest. Most people in the U.S. have somebody in their family or know of somebody in their relative base.
Absolutely,
that's a pedophile. So
absolutely.
it's a thing.
It's almost like it's a non-spoken of accepted thing. You are right, and taking down this global network that's been operating for centuries. It has. We can't deny that. But the point is I'm really proud of these countries that are stepping up right now, and they're exposing it. They're arresting people. They're going to prosecute. America needs to be doing the same exact thing, because the foundation of it appears, based on what we've seen released and revealed over the last year, it appears that the foundation is here in the United States of America. Everything keeps coming back to Epstein Island in the Caribbean. It keeps coming back to, I don't want to say, because
to me, Epstein was just
he was a pawn. That's right.
He was an upper class pimp.
Yeah, he was a blackmailer.
Yeah, and he had plenty to blackmail him with, because
he filmed and photographed and documented everything. The guy was a genius in his own right, but a horrible genius, and a man that was incarnate evil. And the people that were involved at the level he's at, that their names are now coming out, Bill. These people are incarnate evil. But you know what they've done?
You remember back in that era when all this was going on, the 80s and 90s, right? When the country clearly wasn't focused on stuff like this, but they also that culture has changed since then.
Oh my God!
There's a lot more awareness of this problem, and just understanding of why it's so bad, and we need to do something about it. Because these are our kids, and if we can't take care of our kids, we can't take care of our society, right?
God's children are not for sale, brother.
Yeah,
God's children are not for sale. That's just it in a nutshell. And there's a movie that just came out, The Sound of Freedom. Have you seen it yet?
I have not.
You need to see it. I've seen it 4 times, and every time I've watched it, I literally wept. It's so well done, and it gives great information of what is going on. And getting back to our conversation of the cartels, that's like you said, as things evolve, a technology becomes more instrumental than it did a decade ago. So product transformation, like you were making that statement, how they'll change according to need and necessity, and what products seem to be bringing the most income to their organization. And human trafficking right now is the number one thing. It used to be weapons, it used to be drugs. It's not. It's human trafficking, hands down. And I love it that it's been exposed. I'm sorry for the people that believe in people that are actively involved but want to sit there and defend them. You have no idea what the hell you're doing, because you're allowing children to be kidnapped, raped, and murdered every single day as a result of that.
And that's been floating around. I don't blame it on the drug war, but I don't think the drug war has helped it. But the femicide, Juarez, these around the Maquiladoras, these women were just getting sexually assaulted and murdered and dumped on the roadside. There's just some. I don't know what you experienced when you're in the thick of it. In Juarez, at one point, it was dangerous as Baghdad in terms of the number of murders that were
I
happening.
can remember being told in 1 year's time there was an estimated 30,000 people killed in the Ciudad Juarez in 1 year,
and it's worse. It was horrible. Well, I mean,
yeah, that was in the 80s. That was
Yeah.
late 80s when it blew all. But that's when Amaya was running the operation up there. He had a partner involved in it because Amaya, of course, was Angel de Cielos. He was Angel of the
he had
Sky.
his fingers in there, and then Carrillo Fuentes took his,
Right, Carrillo Fuentes, exactly right. That's when it got gnarly.
Yeah, well,
But,
Calderon started his war on the cartels.
Exactly.
And this goes back to what we're trying to do in Mexico now, which, we back in that era was 2006. He came in into 2012 was his war on cartels, right?
Yeah,
Now,
I wrote something about that actually. Yeah,
and you agree, violence just got worse. The situation got worse. It didn't get better when they brought in.
But,
And we did have a U.S. because I was covering it then, covert U.S. involvement with that. Let's say not on like we're doing now, providing intelligence, training, that kind of thing. And it was with the cooperation of the Calderon government. Now we sort of have a bit of cooperation with Scheinbahn in Mexico, and he's but there's a thin line between cooperation and unilateral action, right? But I don't see it working. I don't see us sending in a bunch of firepower against the cartels. Really, it's just going to there's 250,000 homicides in Mexico since Calderon's war.
yeah,
I've
heard that.
Yeah, and 60,000 disappeared. So it's just not going to work. So I wonder what your thoughts are on that. And on top of it, we're putting, we send in, we'll probably use drones, but the point is, you blow up a drug lab, whoop-de-doo. I mean,
we got bigger things to worry about than that, because a lot of when we're talking about the transitioning of products and stuff, they're also bringing people in that are cells that want to hurt America.
Well, I gotta ask you about, because that came up right after the Iraq war with the weapons of mass destruction.
Exactly.
And then you're saying the cartels right after 9 might bring people. There's been no record of anyone ever coming through to commit a terrorist act, because the cartels are not political entities. They don't want to.
No, they're in it for the money. Do you know what they get paid?
And they don't want to blow up their customers or bring the heat down. So I don't see. In fact, after 9/11, there were some reports that some of the cartel operatives were cooperating.
We're operational with the United States intelligence agencies. Absolutely correct. And by being that, brother, they were allowed to maintain and continue on in their endeavors.
Yeah,
what they were doing was the lesser of two evils.
And then they used the Sinaloa Cartel to attack the rivals. The U.S. government worked with us just like in Afghanistan.
Yeah, absolutely.
It worked with one to break up the others, and after the others were all kind of gobbled up by the one they helped, they broke apart the Sinaloa Cartel and went after its leadership. Right. That's kind of but it's just it's just over and over again. And now we just start over. We reset the chessboard is all we did.
We're getting ready to close here in a couple of minutes. I can see that, but I want to say one thing here and now. My biggest memory of the moment of change was the instant that marijuana left us and we got into the cocaine. It went from hugs and handshakes to AK-47s and people being shot right in front of you, just as an example. Paranoia. The amount of money there was so much money coming in during that time when I was operational up here with my deceased friend, Pat Grady, that we were literally tearing sheetrock off the walls, pulling the insulin out, packing them full of money and rocking them over because we couldn't get it. We couldn't hide it.
I remember those reports. I remember, yeah. And
it's in my reports. Yeah, it is.
I mean, people that smoke grass or weed or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, we're mellow.
They're going to get them off the couch and to get the next bag of chips.
Yeah.
But
now give a gangster a kilo of cocaine on the coffee table and watch him lock and load, and the next thing you know, everybody's dead. I mean, the mentality, brother. The mentality was so frighteningly violent in the beginning, and I'm not.
That's what I remember. I remember those days that when it was the 80s when I saw I was in the West then. Yeah, late 80s, and it was just everywhere, and that's when crack exploded. And
that's exactly when crack exploded.
And
I
started covering stuff. I was covering the inner city Milwaukee and the crack explosion, and that whole world. I remember walking in after hours places where there was like a mound of cocaine on the table and a 14-year-old kid with a shotgun at the door, guarding the door.
You're exactly right.
Folks
That are listening to this, that's truthful. You know, I got to tell you, when I had a friend of mine, he was only 7 years old when I met him down there, and we would ride burros from the mining camp daily when he had come. And the man Mimo was in charge of my safety and, you know, making sure nothing happened to me while I was in country. And his friend was the uncle to Ramon Arellano Felix. And he would come over and he would bring Ramon with him. And Ramon was 7 years old. And him and I would go riding burros. I was 15, 16. But I fell in love with the kid. You know, he was there 3 or 4 times during my time down there. Well, later, as you know, the Arellano Felix family owned and controlled the Tijuana corridor. That was their plaza. And I can remember I was in Tijuana doing something, but I ran into somebody that knew how to get a hold of Ramon, knew how to get a hold of the family. And Ramon, when he found out that I was there, it was absolutely amazing. We spent 3 days and nights together, banging hookers, snorting coke, just going totally insane together, out there shooting guns in the middle of the streets in downtown Tijuana. I mean, that's my last memory of Ramon. And then years later, of course, I got a phone call and was told he'd been shot and killed in Mazatlan. And that was very heartbreaking to me, because my greatest memories of Ramon, aside from those 3 days, was this young kid, this innocent kid, riding burros with me on Vicente Guerrero, which was in the Durango-Zacatecas border, the frontera there. And when I think of Ramon today, I still think of him as that little kid.
Well, that's the thing. These are real people with real lives, and
they are, and they're gone.
You get in this lane, and there's no way out, you know, and you get in a very simple way often. You didn't intend to get into the, you know, but it just sucks you in and you can't get out. And I've seen that.
I did try.
Yeah. No, and a lot. Yeah. And you know, yeah, it's a rough life, but I know you've had an interesting life. At least you can say that.
Oh my God. Yes. I'm so grateful to God. And I'm glad that I transitioned in my faith. And October 19th of 1994, I was heading into federal prison and fell on my knees in a cell and just said, I can't take anymore. I had a contract put on me that day that we had confirmed. My wife filed for divorce the day before that.
And
yeah. And even with all the work I did, I got sentenced to 8 years of federal prison on my mom away. But anyway, I was on my knees, just looking up to God. If you're real, you know, you got to take me from this, because I can't do any more. And an inmate walked in, knelt on his knees beside me, put a hand on my shoulder and started praying. A few seconds later, on the other side of me, another inmate did the same thing. And in that moment, it broke. And since October of that era, the early 90s, I have never, ever, ever questioned my faith in God. So I got hungry. I wanted to learn about it. I did Assemblies of God seminary studies in federal prison, got ordained in federal prison, my original ordination. And then I was reordained by a bishop here in Seattle when I got out of federal prison. And this is my 26th year with that church. And,
yeah, well, that's good. That's good for you. Good for
yeah.
you.
Why jumping off on missions? Here I am preaching the gospel of Christ, and I'm heading down to buy 500 kilos of cocaine in a Costa Rican whorehouse. You know, the next day, the insanity of it. I literally took
like that. Life. If we accept that, if we can,
I love that.
There's not like the next moment isn't given, and we don't know what it's going to be. But you know, we
got that right, brother.
We can control what we do. We can't control what other people do. So you know, you just do the best you can with what you know. And we've all gotten into jams. I mean, you got into a serious one, but we've all been in jams.
It's life.
We've had people help us out. We found things that helped us get through it. And this is my point. What I was getting to, the U.S. prison system, is filled with a lot of folks, nonviolent offenders, including mainly
the feds mainly.
It's really hard. The recidivism rate is so high still, and I really think there's a lot of work to be done. However, whatever programs work to deal with that.
Well, brother, I have a doctor.
You're a success story.
And I work every single day with people that are addicted, raped, live on the streets. I deal with that. That's my ministry.
Homeless, I know. Yeah, and I remember, you say I did some background. I know you were involved in all that.
Oh yeah, still in.
Yeah, that's cool. I think that's cool. And we know we have a huge homeless problem here in Seattle. I mean, it's like,
oh my God. And where I'm at here, but listen, we're getting ready to wrap up here, brother. And I want to tell you before we disconnect from all of this, you and I should definitely get together and have coffee sometime in the near future. I'd love to talk to you off air.
That'd be good.
Have something on my mind. Well, Pete, I want to thank you for bringing this guest into our show today. Bill, it was an honor. It was a pleasure. And I'm really, really proud to have met you. I love it. It's very rare that I run into people that can literally understand the journey that I have been through. And I ran into one today. And I appreciate you so much. And, someday we'll have to have you back on the show. We'll have to do it.
All right. Well, you keep doing a good work out there,
Thank you, brother. You too. Keep your journalistic practice going. We need it. Okay, folks. Well, that wraps up another episode today. And I'd like to take this moment to thank each and every one of you for taking your time to catch our show. Now, if you like these shows, I would ask that you would please hit like, share, and subscribe. It's so important to us that we get these messages out, and we understand that these are graphic, almost toxic interviews. But, this is the kind of impact that we feel is needed in order to make sure that people understand the significance of the problems that we are confronted within our own country and around the globe. So I'm going to say at this time that I love you all. God bless you all. Hasta luego, y vaya con Dios, and go Victors.